Okay, last time I was rudely cut off by my recording system, but the idea is that we've used this basic function of recursion to just take one thing and another thing, stick them together and create a new thing and just keep doing that over and over again. And it turns out you can take the very same words, put them in the very same order using recursion, and yet do that in a different way, which leads to, well, these kind of invisible structures, these different trees, which are different. So even though the same sequence of words here, the girl saw the boy with binoculars, we can explain why we can mean two different things with that by explaining that, oh, even though that sequence of words is the same in each of these instances, there's a different invisible structure tying all those things together, this invisible tree structure. And if you're a sophisticated linguist, unlike myself, you can then explain a lot of the examples that I gave you in the last couple videos about why you can't move things in certain ways. Well, it's because the way we put sentences together are in terms of these invisible tree structures. Now, what's also cool that you can show about this is why it seems that actually the thing that we're born with that allows us to create language is pretty much innate, even though there's so much difference between the different sorts of languages that we learn. So the latest and greatest theory about this from a lot of linguists is that it's just this simple recursion rule that we've been talking about here itself, which is unique to humans and that we're all born with. Because what you can see is that even a language that's different from English, so you can think of, say, if you've learned German or a little Latin, for example, well, oftentimes the verb can come at the end of a sentence. Verbs can't come at the end of the sentence in English. If you do, you kind of get one of those like blah reactions. So you might think like, well, we can't be born knowing language because, you could grow up in an English speaking society and learn this language in which verbs can't come at the end of the sentence. But if you're born in a German or Latin speaking society, well, you're going to grow up thinking that's totally okay. So it seems you can't be born with a basic rule. Well, no, you can be born with this basic rule of recursion. And that explains why there can be these differences between languages. But you can also see why those differences actually aren't so big. So the idea is once you've created a tree structure like this, languages, German, French, English, Mandarin, etc., basically only differ one from another in the way in which their words are pronounced and whether those trees are flipped one way or another. So if you think about those tree structures as little mobiles, like it's just hanging from a little hook in the ceiling up at the top where the little point is there, the idea that is that different languages mostly just differ from one another, but in terms of, well, whether you flip this left arm over to the right and the right arm over to the left, or flip these two around. So you can see that in a language like Latin, for example, where you can just take before this little section here, this little V, you just flip that around so the stuff that was on the left is now on the right, and the stuff that was on the left that was on the right is now on the left. And then you get an order like the girl with binoculars the boy saw. Now that sounds really weird in English, but that's exactly how you'd say this in Latin. Puella cum binocularis puerum vidit. And so even though that seems like totally different than how we would say things in English, there's actually just one little change. Boop, you just switched this left branch of the tree with this right branch of the tree. And so if you're a little kid learning Latin or learning English, all you have to learn is, oh yeah, when you're doing your recursion, do it in an order so that this stuff ends up on the left and this stuff ends up in the right, or do it the other way around. So that's the only real difference there. And that's the amazing property that you and I have been born with. But even really sophisticated, smart animals like Kanzi the bonobo have not been born with. So I'll give you a little bit in just a while about why that makes you and I such interesting users of language, but not so much Kanzi.